Hey, welcome to the reunion tour 2025. Two old guys and a middle-aged guy talk about guitars and gear and stuff. So, Tim, Scott, how you doing? It's been a minute, huh?
A good minute, man. Like, did you have a beard, Tim, last time I saw you?
Actually, I don't think I did, but I do
I
think
don't
your
think you
beard
did.
is bigger and longer.
I know.
But
I
I
think
do
it
have to
was
point
like
out,
maybe like this.
yeah, I have to point out though that Bill's kind of lying because he and I actually hung out pretty recently for like the first
Yes,
time in
that is
forever.
true.
So
Yes, yeah, yeah. Tim was in Vegas for a conference, and we sat down and had lunch about what 2 or 3 weeks ago.
yeah, we had fish and chips and talked about kilts. It was great.
Yes, we did. It was
Well, you
awesome.
know, I am the
We'll
antisocial
bring
one.
up something else we'll talk about in just a second because there's a theme to the kilt thing. So I was actually trying to think of it earlier today. When was the last time we did this? I don't think that I had my newspaper job yet, so that would have been like the end of 2022.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years because I was just thinking I'm actually in a different room. Like my studio room in the basement's different than where it was last time we met, or last time we met. Last time we did this.
Last time
So
we
I've
gathered.
completely like changed jobs. My life has changed since then. So
Awesome. And okay, so we're actually going to try and keep things well. Actually, before we move on from the kilt thing is a kind of an inside joke a little bit. My band dumped me a few weeks ago over my stated intention to wear a kilt on stage. And Tim, you have something to tell us about that kind of that cultural heritage.
about my new musical adventure.
That's your new
So
musical
are
adventure.
are we going right into our gear that we want to talk about today?
We can start there.
Okay, I actually have two, but I have to show this on the camera for anybody watching. So there is my bagpipe chanter. It's official. I actually went to my bagpipe lessons tonight. So the quick version of this is so I'm probably about a quarter Scottish, but if you were to talk to my grandpa, he'd just want you to believe that we're all Scottish through and through. Because they are the loudest part of my heritage. And anyway, I've been telling my wife for about a decade. We went to Scotland about 10 years ago. And I've been telling her ever since I was going to play the bagpipes, and that was going to be my retirement plan. And I was going to be like in pipe bands. And she didn't know what to get me for Christmas this year. So she gave me an envelope and it had bagpipe lessons in it. So for the last coming up 4 months now, I've been learning to play the bagpipes, learning to play the chanter, and now I am officially shopping for bagpipes. So I also have to shop for a kilt. So
I actually own one kilt, and there's another one on the way as we speak.
next time you see me and Bill, we'll both be in kilts. Pretty excited about it. I'll have pipes to go with mine, but he can bring his Gretsch and we'll do like an ACDC long, or what is it? Yeah, Long Way to the Top. We'll do a cover of that.
I have threatened to sport one on occasion.
Well, join the club. We can all get them.
I got some
You know,
Irish and Welsh heritage. I'm
but
sure one of those.
that's the way I did it. It's like I mean, if you look at the actual uh, DNA, my mom's side is Irish, my father's side is Spanish, um, but my dad, who raised me, is where Evans comes from, is Welsh. And so when I thought about doing this, I was like, I wonder if there's an Evans tartan. And I looked it up, and son of a bitch, there is. And I finally found a way to get one that wasn't $800 from Scotland. So I've ordered that, and I have a black and gray one that's called Gray Watch. And I have the socks and the flashes and
Hey,
kind
if
of the
Zach
whole nine
Wild can
yards.
wear one, you can wear one.
That's right, man. It's like hey, Zach Wild has been rocking one for decades.
Yeah, man, no doubt.
As
And
did Axl Rose. He wore one too.
oh yeah, Axel wore one. So
Well,
basically, all the
go ahead.
assholes.
Well, I was gonna say, I've already picked mine out. I'm buying my grandpa, his mom was the McDonald, and so there's like 50 different McDonald tartans, but I'm going to buy the McDonald Lord of the Isles, which is basically when they conquered like the north half of the island and declared themselves Lord of the Isles. And I'm like, that's awesome. It's also my favorite one, like the pattern. So that's what I'm going to go with.
Awesome. Next time we do this, we all need to wear kilts. Of course, you can't see us from the waist down, so it really doesn't matter. We could all say we're wearing kilts right now, and nobody would know.
I'll just stand
I mean, you
back
guys don't even know if I'm wearing pants, for God's sakes.
I don't expect you to wear pants most of the time when you're only on camera from like neck up. So
yeah, right. I mean, why bother? Okay, so Tim showed his first gear thing. What do you got, Scott?
Well, I don't have anything to show you, but I'm totally in awe of the quad Cortex. And
I've heard about this thing.
They're cool.
Seriously contemplating selling off all of my pedals and outboard gear and buying that.
So what I mean, I'm not sure I understand the system, to tell you the truth.
The quad Cortex is like it's like a multi-effect unit, like those floorboard multi-effect unit things, like a Line 6-1 or the Helix,
right.
Blah 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 blah. But this one, there's just so much more that it can do. But what I like about it is for the output section, and part of what the other thing you want to talk about is the tribute bands that I'm playing in. Like one of the shows that I do is an 80s show, and they do Stray Cats in there, and Loverboy, and Billy Idol, and Rick Springfield. So I play in my upright, but it's a pain in the butt. I'm carrying like 2, sometimes 3 pedal boards, the upright, and I got to switch and plug in and la 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 la. But with the quad Cortex, it has 4 separate inputs and 2 separate outputs that you can assign. So I can assign the first input for my upright and the output for my upright. And then the second one, I can actually plug in the second one and the third one, 2 other electric basses, like a 5-string and a 4-string, and assign that to number 2 output. You can, what do they call it? Some kind of sampling or modeling.
Yeah, I said that's the thing that I was intrigued about. It's like you can sample your pedals or something like that.
Yeah, any pedals that you like, amps that you like. Huge. You can run a microphone through there while you're playing your guitar, like for a soloist kind of thing. And then there's all the chains that you can set up and all the other stuff. But from doing fly dates and traveling with 2 basses, and pedal board, and clothes, it's a pain in the butt, man.
Are you traveling with the upright?
No, I can't.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's just too hard.
The case would, if I had the case alone is $1,000 for a road case.
Right.
I got that bass on a lark.
I know you got that case for like $50 or something.
The bass works amazing now. I got a new guy. Anyways, all uprights got to be backlined. But I'm traveling with 2 electric ones because I'm paranoid. And my pedal board is too heavy, so it has to go in a big suitcase and checking that. And old man humping 2 basses through the airport. There's got to be a better way, man. So I saw this dude with the quad Cortex, and it's like,
well, I've got to tell you, so I completely endorse this product, Scott. Not that I have one, but my good buddy Chunga, I don't know if I've talked about him before. He's actually a Vegas guy like you guys. Anyway, he and I were also hanging out recently. We used to work together, and he's like one of my gear buddies. And our favorite thing to do is Guitar Center lunch. We used to work together, which meant we went to Guitar Center, and then we'd grab like Burger King on the way back to the office. So we went and did our Guitar Center lunch when he was in town. We went in and we were looking at all these pedals and everything because you guys know I'm a total pedal junkie.
Yes,
but he got a quad Cortex. Oh, we'll talk more about that. He got a quad Cortex probably 2 years ago and has basically sold off almost everything. Yeah. And he was telling me about that because I have a bunch of pretty crazy pedals, and he was like, dude, I can plug all those in there and create my own IRs of those pedals in the quad Cortex and can basically simulate anything that you want to give me.
Absolutely.
But yeah, he used to be as bad as me when it came to gear. He's still as bad as me when it comes to buying guitars, but when it comes to buying effects and things like that, or amps, he just does everything the Quad Cortex and swears by it. I
How
hear it is like,
expensive is it?
It's like 18.
yeah, it's about
Okay, so
almost
it's the
2
same
grand.
amount as a Helix.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's same price range as like the top level of Helix, but it is several years newer. Because the Helix has been around for what, like 6-7 years now, something like that.
More. It's that is
Yeah, for a
the
minute.
Line 6 doesn't even consider the Helix to be a product. They consider it to be a platform, and it's been around for 10 years.
Oh, is it 10 now? Okay.
Yeah.
But that
Anyway,
Quad
very cool.
Cortex, holy moly, man. I've watched
Yeah,
several videos.
it sounds pretty interesting. I
It's
mean,
amazing.
I'm so wedded to the Helix platform because I use it for all my MIDI stuff and everything too, that I don't know if I could, it's like I'm so tied into the Apple ecosystem, even though I hate the company. There's no way I can ever escape.
I looked at that, but I didn't see where there was an option, like with the Quad Cortex, for the ins and outs to be assignable and separate.
Right.
Plus,
And that's
I
the way
use
I
that
use it.
drop. I use that drop pedal.
Right.
So with the Quad Cortex, I don't have to use that. They have the
Right.
kick,
You just call up a preset and it's got the drop pedal in it.
and it goes down, but the Quad Cortex also goes up. A semitone
Really?
up and a semitone down.
That's kind of interesting.
That's game changing.
Yeah. And I'm guessing it's a lot smaller than like your pedal board.
Oh yeah, and a lot like my pedal board is almost 40 pounds.
That's about mine. And I finally broke down and bought a new one.
Ridiculous. This thing, and when you're on that plane, ounces are dollars. So if I can get away with eliminating that whole thing and just using it as a carry-on in my backpack and check my guitars and throw some clothes in with my guitars,
Then you're in a lot better shape.
life is beautiful, man.
I've had to move to
two basses is not a good thing.
I've had to move to a couple different pedal boards because my main one in my house is too big to travel with. So I have to have I call it mega board. It literally it's just too big. So I've had to go to smaller boards that I take places with me that will have lots of multi effects pedals and things like that on them because I just can't bring the big one with me.
Well, I'm going to have to do some screenshots and pictures and everything that will fly in after we're done recording some of this stuff. I actually finally did replace my SKB pedal board that I've had for a billion years, and was falling apart. The latches were breaking, and and I the guys who do that what's that podcast you like, the Pedal Show or something like that, the British guys. Yeah. And they have one that they endorse called a gig rig. And it's really very cool, but it was also $800 for the pedal board with a cover and a bag. And I'm like, yeah, no, even if I could get myself to pull the trigger on this, if my wife ever found out, I would be dead meat.
Homeless.
So, it was not going to happen. So I looked on Temu and I found, a standard kind of metal pedal board that was wide enough for all my stuff. Everything goes on it. And I think I paid $60 for it with a bag. But, it was actually hard to find it. I had to sit there and hunt around for hours because I needed one that was a minimum of 28 inches wide. And that's hard to find, man. I mean, they tend to like top out at like 20 or 22. It took me a while to find one.
Yeah, mine's 18. And I got a lighter weight one, like one of those ghost fire ones. You've ever seen those?
Yep.
Like totally aluminum tube, but even still, I got the main pedal board, and I use that one for the upright pedal board.
So
It's
I have
a
to
lot,
correct
man.
myself. It is called the pedal show. I said that pedal show, and I was thinking of that 70s show. No, it is the, not that. Also, my pedal board at home, I think, is 36 by 20.
Oh my
Oh my Lord, that's like
I
now
had to buy like one of the true bypass like loops on there and put pedals in different chunks because my signal was so bad that I have to be able to like turn off entire sections at a time.
where did you find a 36-inch wide pedal board?
I built it.
Okay, there you go. That's I knew that was going to be the answer.
Yeah, I had to build it to be able to get something as big as I wanted. It's got, I think, 3 different power supplies on it.
my God.
It's amazing. It's a work of art.
But you can't take it anywhere because it weighs 1,000 pounds.
Probably like 70, but yeah.
Yeah. So my thing, and I'm going to have to put some screenshots on it. So back in mid 2020, during the plague times, when me and Scott were trying to put together a yacht rock band for a minute and a half, and I was already starting to play some of the MIDI guitar and do that stuff. And I remember, I was playing like organ sounds and some electric pianos and everything. I was like, well, I
You
wonder
were
if I could.
flute in there too, weren't you?
Yeah, and the flute sounded okay. And then, but it was like I wanted to try and do a sax solo, and I remember the song was "Smoke of a Distant Fire," and so I got the standard sax that comes with main stage or Logic. They're the same ones. And I sat down and did that, and I learned the solo. And Scott came over and was like, "Hey man, check this out! This is awesome!" And I played it, and Scott just went, "Dude, that sounds like ass." So that that made me go on a hunt for actual saxophones, virtual saxophones that sound good, which I found. They're made by a company called Audio Modeling out of Italy. They are modeled, not sampled, so they're extraordinarily expressive. You need to use an expression device with them, though. Either it can be a pedal, if you're playing a keyboard, it could be your mod wheel. But the way they work best is with the breath controller. So I have been playing saxes and flutes and trumpets and everything with the breath controller off the guitar now for a while. But that's not the cool thing. That's the thing I just found. So the problem with these instruments, they sound fantastic. I mean, they sound really unbelievably realistic, but they're monophonic. You can only play one note at a time. And if you try and play two, it just goes wildly between the two notes, and it's horrifying. I've tried to fake it out a few times, never worked. And so about and ironically, just weeks before my band dumped me, I found this plugin called Divisimate, and I'll put a screenshot up on it. And the Divisimate micro version was not expensive; it was like $49. But what this does, and it's like specifically made for these monophonic instruments, is you add that plugin before your virtual instruments, and then you set up to 4 virtual instruments, and you tell it, I want note 1 to go to this instrument and note 2 to go to this instrument, and you can play up to a 4-note chord, and it just maps it as virtual MIDI ports to each of the things. So I was playing horn sections that with a trombone, a tenor sax, and 2 trumpets, and it sounded really pretty damn real. It was.
I think we need to have Scott come over and hear it and get his opinion on how it sounds. But
yeah, right, yeah, because I think it's awesome, and Scott's gonna come over and go, dude, that sounds like ass, man.
I remember that day because I think you had just gotten all that stuff and you were trying it out. I'm like, dude,
and I was trying it out, and the sax thing is like, well, the flute kind of worked, but saxophones are hard, man, and it's like, Yeah, like
I think
even
the
on a
best ones
great
were like the
keyboard,
trumpet.
saxophone sounds suck.
Yeah, the trumpets
And
were like the best ones.
which one?
The trumpet.
Yes, because those are brass is pretty easy, but the thing is too, and this is one of the things I love about this. Even if you've got great horns, say on a keyboard, and you've got like a horn section pad that's got 3 different horns, and you play a chord, well, what that's doing is all of the notes of the chord are being played on all the instruments because it's a patch, right? So if you hit one note, and then it's going to play a trombone, a sax, and a trumpet, or whatever it's set up to be. And if you play 3 notes, then you're going to have 3 notes that are all playing a trombone, a sax, and a trumpet, and they sound fake. What this does is it splits it. So now you've got 1 note on the trombone, 1 note on the sax, 1 note on the trumpet, and it's like having a horn section. It's pretty astounding.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool. I want to hear it.
Okay, so there's our gear stuff.
Wait, I have to.
Cortex.
Oh, there's your quad Cortex.
There it is.
I have to talk about one more piece of gear real quick too, if
What
I'm
you
allowed
got?
to. Well, I wasn't really going to go too much in the bagpipe chanter. I was going to bring that kind of as a joke. But I do have to say, so kind of my lead up to this is, other people that I've been learning with, everybody's getting ready to buy their bagpipes, and our teacher's always like, just buy the nicest ones you can get because you'll never buy any more. These are the only ones you'll ever buy. And I'm like, no, if you know me, I'll end up having like 5 different sets of bagpipes because, just in this room right now, I looked around when we're standing here, I can see 12 guitars in this room, and that's not even going into the closet. And we've already talked about the pedal problem. So I just had to give a shout out to a pedal company that I'm obsessed with, and I'm trying to collect everything they offer. So they're called Aclum. They're out of Barcelona. This is my latest pedal from them. If I can get on the camera. So this is the Mocker. What these guys do is they build pedals. This is my second one. I also have the Dr. Robert. What they do is they go look
I
for
heard about that one. I
vintage
know about
gear.
that one.
Yeah. So they do like vintage gear from the 60s and 70s. They go get the original gear, like stuff that's hard to find, and then they basically reverse engineer it and build a complete reproduction in pedal form. They'll use JFETs instead of tubes and things like that, but they'll get as close as they possibly can to the original amp or whatever it is. So the Dr. Robert, for example, I talked about, I had that one first. It's based off of the Vox. I think it's the UL37, which is the amp that the Beatles used on Revolver. Rolling Stones also used it. Led Zeppelin used it. It's like the Heartbreaker solo. You can actually get a Led Zeppelin version of the Dr. Robert that's made to look like theirs. But the one thing they left off of the Dr. Robert was the fuzz channel, because the amp that they were using to model these off of, the fuzz channel was broken. But then they were able to go out and find other it's either 37 or 73. Can't remember the number. Anyway, they were able to find other amps that did have a working fuzz circuit. And so then they reverse engineered it into the Mocker. So the fuzz, this sounds like default. If you think about like Sgt. Pepper, like the guitar part in the beginning, that's the fuzz circuit that's in here. But the cool part about them is they will only use clipping diodes from the 60s that are the same ones that were used in the amp. So they made like a couple hundred of them. Man. Yeah, and then they stopped and they didn't make them again. And then this is off of the second version, and it's because they found a airplane like repair shop up in the UK somewhere that had a box of these diodes that had been sitting there since the 60s. So when you order the pedal, it comes like the little wax paper bag that the diodes have been sitting in since the 60s to show you like this is where they came from, this is where they've been. But I love overdrive. I have more overdrive pedals than anybody should have. But fuzz I struggle with. But I will tell you, this is my favorite fuzz pedal I have ever used. Of course, you can hit that very 60s Beatles sound. But one of the things they did on it is they tested a bunch of the different amps and the different fuzz circuits, and they they put the bias knob on here, which you wouldn't have had on the original amp. It was basically just an on or off. And it basically swings from like the most spluttery, choppy version of the amp that they used to the cleanest fuzz they use. And so you can get kind of all the different variants that came off of the amps because they were really inconsistent on their fuzz. Anyway, it is a killer fuzz pedal. They cost way too much. I love Aclum, and they just came out with the Go Rocky, which is the White Album Vox amp that they used. So that's the next one on my list. But there's also like a Pete Townsend one. There's a trying to think what else they have. There's an
Is
Eric
the Pete
Clapton
Townsend a
one.
high watt?
I'd have to go look at it again. I mean, you can like it's Aclum ACLAM. You can go check them out. I'm way too much of a
I'm not going to
fanboy.
because I know those pedals are $800 each. So
No, they're not. They're like 300. And I was gonna say
that's what he tells his wife, by the
Yeah.
way.
no. I don't tell her even that much. So, but they are.
Oh, this it's like $50.
I will tell you, they are some of the coolest pedals I've ever had. There's a lot of pedal companies I love, but they also have the packaging is amazing. Like the Dr. Robert, they got Klaus Forman who did the Sergeant or not Sergeant, the Revolver cover to design the pedal. So like the artwork on the pedals is incredible. The packaging is incredible. This one came with a button that looks like the Sergeant Pepper drum. That's actually, but it's the Mocker logo. That's actually on the strap for my Hofner bass, which I don't think you can see on camera. But anyway,
see it behind you, yeah.
Oh, you can? Okay, I can't see the way it's cut. But anyway, the whole presentation of these pedals, it's totally worth it. Very cool stuff. And I am regularly one of the top contributors on Facebook. So,
and his buddy with the quad Cortex can just sample it and not have to buy it.
He was like, "Hey man, next time we hang out, you should bring those pedals."
I was
going to sample all of them, and
I'm gonna have to make a trip to Tim's house and sample all his pedals.
Yeah, right.
Come on over, guys.
God help us if we all ever got into the same room.
Scott and I have already shared bunk beds.
He has everything.
I was gonna say we'll have like the two old guys and a middle-aged guy talk gear sleepover. We do it in my basement. We'll stay up all night, each other's hair,
in our kilts.
drink Jolt Cola. All right, let's go to the topic.
That's too good. Okay, so here's the kind of serious part. First off, Scott, you're Italian. How the hell do you pronounce this guy's last name?
Okay, look, let's get one thing straight. My last name is Woodward.
I know this.
It's not Italian. It's Irish. My family is Irish, Welsh, and Syrian.
Why the hell do I think you're Italian?
Because where I grew up...
Because everybody does, by the way.
Everyone does. But where I grew up, everyone was Italian.
Oh, okay. So how do you pronounce this guy's last name?
I'm as close to being Italian as you can get without being Italian.
Okay, there you go.
I don't know. The guy in the article there?
Yeah.
Now I have to go look at it. Now I'm curious.
Like Gioia or something like that?
Let's see.
This is the most interesting part of the podcast. Listening to us try to figure out where his name is at and how to pronounce it. Ted Gioia. Ted Gioia. Gioia.
All right. So anyway, Ted, we're just gonna call him Ted G because nobody can pronounce his last name.
Teddy G.
He writes a Substack called The Honest Broker that I've been a subscriber to for quite a long time. He writes about a lot of culture stuff. He writes about a lot of jazz. But he wrote this piece a couple of months ago with the headline, it's about something about in the music business, 80 is the new 20. About how, and there's basically three parts to it. So the first part he talked about is how the streaming services, all of them, are not playing any new music. They're playing some, but when he defined new music as something that was 18 months old or less, and on rock streaming, it's like 10%. And then what they call catalog, which is anything between 18 months and 5 years old, that's like another 25%. And then what they call deep catalog, which is anything over 5 years old, was 50% across the board in every single genre. World music was a little less than that. Latin music was a little tiny bit less than that, but basically everything was right at between 10 and 25% new, between right at 25%, 18 months to 5 years old, and 50% 5 years old or more. So I thought we'd start with do you guys listen to new music? Oh, the
All right,
shortest conversation
I'll take
ever.
that back. I listen if my wife asks me to, but I rarely listen to music if I'm not learning it to play it. If I don't have to learn it, then I'm not listening to it. And really, when I'm listening to music, it's really old music, not. But I mean, I did turn you on to Pink Pony Club.
Well, no. I already knew about that, dude.
Oh, you did?
But we did share our love of that song in text messages a little while back. Well, it's like, I've got three, younger artists, and we'll define young as anything under 40, and all female.
Babies.
It's like I don't know. Yeah, right. Because we're old, so anything under 40 is young. There are three of them, and I'm one of those guys that's like, if I really love something, I'm going to buy it, not just stream it. So there's the first one. It's still in the wrapper. I don't know if you can tell, but that is the Tortured Poets Department.
I can say that's Taylor Swift. I can see that.
It is. The songwriting on this is astoundingly great. As a songwriter, I just
Bill's a
listen to
Swiftie.
it in awe sometimes. I mean, she's making cultural references that she shouldn't even know. I think she's 35 years old. The title cut, the Tortured Poets Department, the chorus is something like, "You're not Dylan Thomas, I'm not Patti Smith. This ain't the Chelsea Hotel. We're modern idiots." And I'm like, she's 35. How does she even know who Patti Smith was or what the Chelsea? The Chelsea Hotel is like gone.
I know.
Wikipedia.
It's like
Wikipedia.
how she even knows about this stuff was I was just blown away. There's a song on there called "But Daddy, I Love Him" that is just. So anyway, I kind of listened to it on a dare, and fell in love with the songwriting. So I bought, and this is not just the album. This is the archive version, which has like 30 songs on it. The other one, which Scott talked about, this is Chappell Roan, Diary of a Midwest Princess. Again, the songwriting is astounding.
I don't know any song other than Pink Pony Club. That's the only one.
I mean, there's stuff on there. There's a song called "My Kink Is Karma" that is maybe the meanest song ever written. She's got, besides the fact that she's an astoundingly great songwriter, there's a song on there called "Coffee." It's a ballad,
which you made me listen to, and then I had stuck in my head for a week, but I couldn't remember what it was, and I was like, "Where did I hear that song?" Because I just had the melody going through my head. Definitely catchy. Very, I would agree. Very well written.
Yeah, super well written song. It's like the lyric is like, "I'll meet you for coffee because if we have wine, and how they're going to go down that the wrong road."
That's why when Bill and I had fish and chips, there was no wine.
There was no wine involved, right? I'll meet you for a coffee and fish and chips.
It was anyway, actually but
huge fan of Chappell. Not only as a songwriter, she has got vocal control. Like I haven't heard. I can't even tell you the last time I heard somebody with this kind of vocal control. Maybe Laura Nero. I mean, it's really been that long. Somebody who's a soprano who's got that kind of control over voice. The other one is I haven't bought because I can't find it on CD is a band out of Toronto called Beaches. four 20-something girls playing guitar-based rock music, which is really kind of a nice change of pace. The chapel was on Rick Beato's show because there's a ripping guitar solo at the end of Pink Pony Club. And he's like, "Is this the return of the guitar solo in pop music?"
So I have to jump in here. I know I just said no, I don't listen to new music. And since I'm the middle-aged guy here, I do have two teenagers. And so my oldest sometimes will have newer stuff playing in the house. My wife does listen to Taylor Swift, so I do listen to that quite a bit. When it comes to new artists, literally the only thing I can think of that I've listened to in the last probably year or two that wasn't like an album from a band that's been around for like 20, 30 years or whatever, was Mammoth, which is Wolfgang Van Halen. Which
now, and I have never heard it. I've heard he's a great guitar player, but I don't know that I have actually heard it.
It's great. Great rock albums. Definitely trying to do his own thing, not trying to be his dad. But what's really interesting, so just two thoughts as you're talking about this. So, like I said, my oldest, he listens to some modern music. Most of it drives me crazy. I have a lot of opinions on why. I won't go into them right now. But my other son, so he's 15 and he's in the bedroom right to that wall, and I could hear him in there playing, trying to learn to play Mean Streets by Van Halen, which, came out in probably 78, 79, 80, somewhere around there.
Something like that, yeah.
And that's all he's listening to. And he wants to go buy a Wolfgang, EVH Wolfgang guitar. That's what he wants. And he's really into guitar. And so that's what he listens to, because he's like, there's just nothing like this anymore. And kind of going along those lines, which I think, so it doesn't surprise me at all that even, younger kids are really leaning into what would now be considered classic rock, because that's still where they're going to. That's like the repository of great guitar, great riffs, great solos, great leads that you're not really seeing anymore. One of the things I was going to say with this that I think is really interesting. So there's a band, Something Corporate. They were, really popular in the early 2000s, like when I was in college, kind of in that, early 2000 pop punk emo era. And I saw them, I believe, twice. Back kind of in their heyday, and then they split up and haven't done anything. And so finally, the lead singer's gone on to front the band Jack's Mannequin, and then Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, if anybody knows those bands. But he decided to get back together with guys from Something Corporate, kind of for a one-off show, and they decided to go on a tour. So I went and saw them again last fall. It's all the original band members. All these guys are in their early to mid 40s now. I think two of them are like lawyers. These guys are not really the rock stars anymore, but they're doing these shows on weekends and things like that. And now a good probably 15 years since the last time they released any new music. I guess they have done one new song with their touring. But like 15 years after they broke up or whatever, they're selling out much bigger venues than they ever did, like at the peak when they were touring before. And I think a lot of it is exactly, what this article goes into. There's just like this level of nostalgia. There's nothing like this anymore. And so everybody who kind of liked it back then has now introduced their kids. My kids haven't seen Something Corporate, but Andrew McMahon, the lead singer, they've seen him live because I've taken their shows. And so what's happening is now you're getting people my age and then their kids in this music. And suddenly this band that, was playing small clubs every time I saw them in the past are now playing like pretty decent sized venues that hold several thousand people, which they couldn't have done that, in their heyday. But you're seeing the same thing with all of these different nostalgia tours. Look at just look. I was looking at the list of concerts coming to Salt Lake this summer, and probably half of them are either like 90s acts or 70s or 80s acts. Like those are all the big shows now, are like the nostalgia tours. That's what people are going to see.
And I think there's something to be said for that. I think part of, I don't know if I talked about this before when, back when we were doing this 2 years ago, but, I've been working part-time for about 4 or 5 years now as a lifeguard. And that means that I'm
you also see Bill in the Speedo.
Yeah, right. I'm grandpa. I'm not even like I'm old enough to be these kids that I work with. I'm old enough to be their dad. I'm their old enough to be their grandfather. I mean, I'm working with kids that are 17 to 21 in that range. Um, and there's music on all the time on their playlists. And so I kind of am, when I'm working, I'm kind of forced to hear it. And I think one of the reasons I just go kind of nuts when I find somebody who's really a great songwriter, like Taylor or Chappell or the girls in the Beaches, um, is I hear so much of current music and the writing is horrifying. It's like there's two chords that go back and forth for the whole freaking song. It never changes. Maybe there's a beat change on the chorus, but there's no variety at all. And so when I hear these young artists, Taylor does it, Chappell does it, the Beaches do it, that are writing songs that have a verse and a pre-chorus and a chorus, and a refrain sometimes, these like parts of songs that make it all super interesting. I get really excited because you don't hear a lot of that.
Well, and I think, this is something that I really started to notice back in college when I was going to, I was very much going to the pop punk emo shows because those were really popular. But I was also going to, at that point, which kind of would have been the nostalgia shows. So Van Halen and, Page and Plant and Def Leppard and U2. And so I was kind of going to both sides. And it was really interesting to see the difference in performance quality. The guys who came up in the 70s, 80s, I mean, I just recently finished Alex Van Halen's book, Brothers. And he talks about the years they spent on the Sunset Strip trying to make it big, playing the clubs there, playing the thousands of shows. So by the time those guys were playing stadiums, I mean, they had thousands of shows behind them. They knew how to perform. They knew how to work together. They knew how to do that. I have it sitting here on my desktop. I have Mike Campbell's book. I'm almost done with it. Talking about the Heartbreakers and the, 5-6 years of them playing together before they made it. And then when these guys would go to the studio, they're knocking out these amazing albums, Van Halen 1 or Damn the Torpedoes or whatever it is in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And, because what you hear on these albums, this is the band. This is what they sound like. Like, you go listen to Van Halen 1. Eruption is not 37 different takes and the best bits of each take taped, cut and pasted together. This is him sitting down in the studio and playing it, and that's what he played. And I think there is just this difference, because I used to notice this when I go to these shows. I'd see these, acts had been around for kind of that era, honestly, the analog era, where it was really expensive to record, and they were incredible live. And then I go see all these newer acts, and this was, when Pro Tools was really up and coming, and people started recording at home, and digital recording was being released to the masses. And none of them could perform live. They sounded awful live. I know there's a big, kind of like a early 2000s tour coming here this summer. My son wants to go to, it's like Offspring, Jimmy Eat World. And he wants to go see Jimmy Eat World. And I'm like, dude, I've seen him a bunch of times, and the guy can't sing live. Like, he sounds awful. I mean, maybe 20 years later now, he's finally learned to sing live, but the guy couldn't carry a tune for the life of him back when I used to go see him. And I think it was because the digital recording world made it so easy for people to record music, and
I think there's something to say for that, yeah.
overdub, autocorrect. Like, there was so much done. And then, I know Rick Beato talks about this, but you look at modern music, and what they're looking for is what is like the cheapest, simplest way to record this. And so that becomes, well, we build the beat with drum samples, and we're not using all this outboard gear we used to use. It's all built in the box, and it's basically like, hey, we can just package this really easily. We just need a good vocalist who's attractive, and we're done. And it's just, it's like everything else. Like they've looked for the cheapest way to make music to get it out there to the masses. And I think there's just been this shift where, starting probably early 2000s, I think is where the shifts happen, where it's become easier and easier and easier to produce high quality sound, like high quality recordings, much less expensive to get that done. and much easier to get that done. And I think because of that, you have so much more music that's put out there that just isn't very good. It's not like back in the day where it was expensive to record an album. And so to be able to get that deal, to be able to get that studio time, like you really had to work for it. You either had to earn the money to do it, or you had to have somebody who believed in you because of how good you were live, that they want to invest in you doing that. And we just don't have that anymore. And there are a few one-off cases. Like I would say Taylor Swift is pretty much single-handedly keeping the music industry alive right now. She probably makes more than all the artists
combined. You're absolutely correct about that. Well, and this is something that I think about a lot. I mean, I know about, I don't know, maybe just before the plague, or maybe it was like during the plague. I don't remember. I went to an Apple store to pick up something that I bought. I don't know, a new iPhone or an iPad or something. I don't remember. But while I was standing around waiting, they had a bunch of MacBook Pros out with Logic running, as demo things where people could come play with it. And they had an actual session for a Billie Eilish song. And I love Billie. I think she's an astounding singer. She's a good songwriter. Her and her brother are a great combo. And they as another younger act who I really like a lot. But I was struck by the fact that the session was about 6 things. It was a drum loop and a bass part and a keyboard part and maybe 2 or 3 vocal tracks, and that was the entire thing. And that's I mean, I'm somebody who likes variety and complexity in music, and I looked at that, which was a big hit song, man. And then I look at the I mean, I'm sitting here. I have a Logic session open for one of the bossa nova songs that's getting pretty close to done. Except I have to find a new singer now, because I'm not going to use
Bill's not bitter. He's not bitter at all.
Not at all. No bitterness here at all.
I heard Scott wants to sing for you.
Yeah, there we go. So anyway, and I'm looking at that, and that's got like 35 tracks. That's got 8 tracks of drums and bass and piano and a couple or 2 or 3 guitars and 15 vocal tracks and everything. I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at that against the Billie Eilish session, which was like 6 to 8 tracks, and that was the whole thing. And I don't know. I don't know which approach is right. I know that I tend to do things deeper because that's the way it was done back in the day, and that's the way I understand to do it. And I want to build things on top of each other and everything. The kids are drawn to a big beat, bass line, some vocals, and that's about it.
My first record I ever did, we rehearsed for 1 year, wrote and rehearsed, and then we took a loan for $2,500 from the drummer's dad, and we recorded the whole record in 1 weekend. Saturday we did all the basic 8 hours a day, all the basic tracks, scratch vocals, and on Sunday we did all the overdubs, all the final vocals, and mix down. 2 days, $2,500. But we rehearsed for a year. When we went in there after a year of rehearsing, we didn't do maybe 2 takes
of everything because you had already played the songs together so many times.
We did, we were in 24-track studio. We didn't use a whole lot. It was bass, drums, and guitar, and singer. Rhythm track overdubs, lead guitar overdubs. That was it.
Well, there's 2 thoughts that come to mind off of this. So the first one is, and it goes to kind of what you're talking about, Bill, and it goes to talking about like layering and layering and layering. There's a quote that I've always loved. It comes from George Martin's book, All You Need Is Ears. And when he talks about when he first started working in the recording studio, this is pre-Beatles, like a decade before he met them. He said mixing was going into the room and pulling the microphone back further. And he said that's how I learned to mix, was the microphone placement, because everything was live and it was room mics and you just had to shift the microphone. That was how your mixing worked. But there are some amazing recordings from that era, which shows you that sometimes simplicity is the best way to go. And it's an interesting thing. So I'll go back. I mentioned that I've been reading Mike Campbell's book, Heartbreaker. And he is very nostalgic of the first two Tom Petty and the Heartbreaker albums. And the reason why is it talks about exactly what Scott just talked about. They rehearsed and they rehearsed and they rehearsed and they rehearsed, and they went in there and took a couple of takes, and it was, this is the best take. This is the one we're going with. And he says, when he thinks back to kind of like the glory days of the band and the early days of the band, that's what they sound like. That's what he remembers them sounding like. And as they got further on in their career, then it came into the overdubs and tracking again and adding this and adding that. And well, he has like positive feelings towards a lot of the albums. He'll even acknowledge like that wasn't really what we sounded like when you listen to us. This is what we sounded like. And I do think I think there's a balance, because you can see in my background all the Beatles stuff. Like obviously, like once they had all the overdubs and things like that, like it's pretty hard to argue that like a Please Please Me is, more exciting than like a Sgt. Pepper or something like that. But there is definitely a difference. There is the Please Please Me, the early stuff. This is what these guys sounded like when they were that club band in Hamburg or Hamburg or whatever it is. This is how they sounded. And then also you hear the later in the career, this is what the creativity allowed them to do, because the studio allowed them to do that layering. So I think there is a balance, but I do think it can become too much, where you almost lose a song and trying to add too many effects and too much to
tracks of guitars and 5 drum.
Well, you know what? And it's interesting, because the reason I pulled this session up was to strip everything back. And it's for a different reason. Scott and I lost a good friend a couple of days ago, Eddie Llewellyn, who was who we played with in bands. He was a world-class piano player and a great trombone player, and just one of the most quality human beings ever to walk the face of the earth.
Always seemed happy. I never saw him.
He was always, I never heard him badmouth anybody. Even if somebody had been like, somebody who deserved to be badmouthed, who had earned it, and somebody else would say something that he would just go, well, and that's as much as I ever heard him say. He never said anything negative. He's just a positive person. There's a lot of people in Vegas who are going to miss him a lot.
Yeah, no doubt.
But Eddie came in about 3 months ago as we started to get closer to being done with this song, and I had him play a piano, and I'm stripping as of right now, this track has probably 10 drum tracks and congas and bongos, and with like 4 microphones and bass and 3 guitar tracks and a saxophone, and I'm like going, you know what? This is going to be piano, because his part was perfect, and maybe a bass, maybe some congas. We're going to strip it all the way back. And I think there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for simplifying. And I think in some ways, at least I know for me, as somebody who's tried to do this stuff, that you keep adding and layering things because you can.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what happens in the future. I think, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you probably have seen the Sound City movie.
Absolutely.
They're talking, the guy in the studio and another dude who went next door and had the, million channel studio where everybody could do whatever you want. And, but when is enough? I liked it when there was only 24 or even 12. This is all you have. So you got to work with this.
And you know what? I think it forced people to have some discipline. Discipline has never been my strong suit.
Well, I think you got to be really creative because that's all you got. Like this is only the space you have, so you got to fit everything you want to say into that space. You don't have all of this creative area. Not me, we do now, but then you didn't. You had a 2-inch tape with 24 tracks. Figure it out,
Yeah,
sucker.
I think I want to find a way to take Logic and limit it. So it's like you can only have 16 tracks. That's all you get.
You could just create 16 tracks and then stop right there and not create any
Yeah.
more. I mean,
Yeah, but no, that requires, what was that word I used before?
discipline.
Discipline. Which is not something I'm good at. So anyway, guys, actually, we've been going for almost an hour, and we were going to talk about some other stuff with this Ted G article, but maybe we can revisit that later about posthumous releases and the fact that those of us who are playing live are going to watch ourselves be replaced over the next few years as these AI driven holographic shows.
I don't think
He
it's
I
gonna
said
want
happen.
to
something in
do a
the article.
holograph show. I want to do a show from my house, like here. Like we booked the three of us. We booked a gig in Florida. We're playing at the House of Blues, but we never had to leave our house. We just changed our shirt and
I'm just going to say, so Kiss said they were done as a band and they were going to create these holograms or something like that to do like pseudo Kiss shows or whatever. And guess who's going on a tour again? It's because it
yeah.
was a stupid idea. Nobody wants to see digital Kiss. It's like either the real guys, flames, spitting blood, or nothing. I do
Well, I don't
think
know, man.
I
There's an ABBA show, and it's not. I mean, the ABBA people are all still alive, but they're in their 80s, and they can't do that stuff anymore. But it's been playing in London to sold out audiences for
yeah, but
three
Brits are
years.
weird.
Okay, granted, but
Just offended the whole island.
I mean that's us. But it's. I went and saw my first show at the Sphere about a month ago, and it was The Dead. Um, so it was very jammy. In 3 hours they probably did 12 songs, kind of thing. Um, but you're not even looking at the band on the stage. You're looking at this giant, 80 million whatever video wall with these unbelievable graphics that are going all the time, and you're not even looking at the stage.
Well, I think we
And
graduated sometime in the 80s from going to shows and watching the band to going to shows and watching a show, watching the light show, watching the explosions, looking at costumes, whatever, watching the dancers now.
Like
I liked it when you went to see the band play instruments. I don't give a crap if you got some people dancing. If you do, cool.
I'm kind of the same way. I mean, the tour that I've seen in the last 4 or 5 years that I enjoyed the most was Elton John at the end of his run, and it's a great big stage and there are lights and stuff, but it was the band, man, and it was the band playing all those songs, and it was awesome.
Yeah. Well, we don't go to shows too much. We went.
Yeah, well, they're too expensive in Vegas. It's ridiculous.
The last one we saw was the Wallflowers. That was a good one. The biggest one we were really disappointed about was Madonna.
I've heard.
Huge letdown. I wanted to go because I thought she was going to have an amazing band, good, like Omar Hakim or some amazing.
It was all tracks.
Yeah. It was a karaoke show. We left before it was even over.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I am completely on the side of I'd rather see a band that sounds great than one that has an amazing show. That being said, Muse puts on an amazing show.
I saw them once.
They also sound amazing live. And I think that's the thing is if the band, I guess what I would say is, a great sounding band will still be great with basic lights and without all of everything else going on. On the flip side, if the band sucks, it doesn't matter how cool the show is
Yeah.
because the music still sucks. And so
But here, but
there
here's,
has
but
to be
here's,
that balance.
but here's a
Still
way to
disagrees.
extend that out. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tim. A great band is a great band. It doesn't matter the show. A crappy band is a crappy band, even if they've got a great show. But if you take a great band and you marry it to a great show, now you've got something completely different.
You guys know
Absolutely.
who Meshuggah is?
Absolutely.
What was that?
You guys know who Meshuggah, the band Meshuggah?
I do not.
Oh man, they just did a show at the House of Blues, and they're a kind of a heavy kind of, sweeping.
Right.
They were the first band I ever seen. They played with rock bands, the whole band, or pods, no amps, no nothing, tiny drum set, everybody direct. But my friend calls them math rock because
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
amazing
Mind-blowing.
light show going on. It was truly amazing. I'd never seen a light show like that with the band, this technical band, and all these lights going there. I was like, okay, wow.
Yeah, so when you get a great band and you marry it to a great show, I mean, I'm not a dead guy, but that band's really good, and we forget that John Mayer is an astounding guitar
That
player.
shreds. I'm not a fan of My Body's a Wonderland, but that dude's an amazing guitar player.
He's an amazing guitar player, man, and all of those guys. I mean, the bass player is plays barefoot. He was with the Allman Brothers. We're gonna overlay it on the screen because I can't remember his name.
That one dude who doesn't wear shoes but plays the bass.
Right. I mean, and he played with the Allman Brothers. He was with the Aquarium Rescue Unit. He's like an astounding, 5-6 string bass player, 2 drummers, a great piano player. Bobby Weir is like in his 80s, but still doing his thing, and he's got that voice. And there were times it was just like, man, this is a really good band, and it's married to this unbelievable show. And I think that's kind of where it's going to be interesting to see how this changes our expectations of live shows.
Well, and I would say, because I know
game changer, the Sphere.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know, I've seen U2 a couple times live, and I know Bono's voice is starting to go, but as a whole, they're incredible live. And so I can see why the Sphere works so well, but you have to have a band that's going to be incredible there. But I'd say the other thing about, and then it's going to enhance that great band. But the other thing is the Sphere experience is going to be pretty limited. They're not going to be building a Sphere in every major city.
No, they're not. I mean, they're getting ready to build a second one. I think it's in like Dubai, Right.
So there'll be a handful of them, and it will be a destination that you go to, but it's not going to be everywhere. And I think that's actually very cool. I think it's very cool to have a venue like that, which is so unique. But once again, because it's limited and they're not everywhere, it's always going to be a band like the Dead and Co. or the Dead and Friends, whatever they call themselves,
or the Eagles, or Kenny Chesney, or U2, and those are the kind of bands that are there that people will travel to come see them. But here's the deal, and here's something to think about for next time, and then we're going to end. I remember saying back when I was doing Gig Magazine about bands and their live sound. In the 90s, we got to a point where you had surround sound in your car. And if somebody's going to come and see you live, you better sound at least as good as the music does in their car. I think that this
with Dolby Atmos.
And the Sphere has something like 160,000 speakers. There's literally a speaker beamed at every seat, so that everybody gets a great mix, no matter what. But the amount of processing is so much that these old bands have had to go to in-ears because the latency is something like 300 milliseconds or something like that. It would make it impossible to play. You have to be on in-ears so you're not hearing the house at all, because it takes so much time to process this stuff for everybody that it makes it impossible to.
That's insane.
All powered by Apple. No, just kidding. Probably not. And on that note, guys.
And on that note, let's call this one to an end. Everybody, thanks for joining us. And
old music is cool. New music is lame for the most part.
75% lame. 80% lame.
At least 80%.
85% lame. Okay, but
87.
there's some cool stuff too. We'll see y'all later.
Till next time.